Over the weekend, guys, Deshaun put out his weekly podcast, QB Unplugged, and he was asked about the future of Cleveland Browns Stadium. And here's Deshaun's answer on what he hopes to see with whatever the Browns decide to do with their future home and play.
Right, you somebody who has to throw in these elements, you know what I'm saying? You have to actually go through the effects of throwing in a dome versus throwing outside. And I think that it's difficult for Cleveland quarterbacks to put up the statistical success, right? Because you play all those home games and you get like a crazy wind game or super rainy or it's cold and people have a hard time catching the like. There's all these different things and elements. Like, what is your thought process on what would you rather do, be in the dome or be outside? Like, is there any advantage to you in terms of being outside?
I mean, it's definitely an advantage. Like, if anybody can sit here and say that it's not an advantage, especially for quarterbacks to play inside and are warm, then you're crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, dry ball and being able to throw the ball without no wind or no lightning or rain, nothing is definitely key. But so I would say if I had to pick, of course I'm gonna go to the dome and the new facility and the lights and all that stuff. That's gonna bring more money to the city, but it's gonna have the team, you know, even more excited. But if they redo the stadium on the lake, it's not gonna be bad either because people hate coming to Cleveland and playing at that stadium. It's one of the toughest environments to play in, and we're gonna use it to our advantage. So I get that side too. But at the end of the day, you still gotta play football. So if I had to pick, I'm choosing the dome. I'm rocking with the dome. I'm rocking with the new lights and all that stuff, and the turf, grass, whatever we pick. That's what I'm going with.
You're a quarterback.
And real quick, so that was Deshaun's answer. I do want to just mention that Brad Stainbrook 1 minute ago tweeted that Cleveland City Councilman Brian Casey has called a press conference today at 1 p.m. to discuss the future Browns Stadium. The press conference is intended to keep the public updated on a potential taxpayer-supported stadium. So just want to throw that out there. Thoughts? Ayer, I'll start with you. Should the quarterback in specific, or really any player, but the quarterback specifically, have any say in the team's plans for a future new stadium? Or is that totally up to the owner and at his discretion?
I think it should be totally up to the owner and his discretion. In the sense of the Cleveland Browns right now, like, I respect Deshaun Watson's opinion, but the average playing career, people say 3.5 is 3.3 years. And this is according to an article I read that was updated February 7th of this year. So if the average NFL playing career is 3.3 years, then most of the players that's currently on the Cleveland Browns offense that's excited
they'll never see a dome.
They'll never see the dome. They'll never be here. So I think that though it's cool to get their input and their opinions, like that's all it is, input and opinions, because most of them won't be around to have that experience. Right. And that's just the truth of the matter. 5 years from now, Nick Chubb will probably be retired. David Njoku will either be retired or on the back end with another team. Same thing for Deshaun Watson and things like that. So you can always hear a player out, but I think, it shouldn't go past just hearing them out. So,
Jay?
Deshaun will be 34 years old in 2029. You think Deshaun Watson's going to be in Cleveland in 2029?
No.
You think
Hard no.
Yeah, I'm with you. He
Hard
could be
no.
here.
No.
So it's irrelevant. Of course, I found it funny the one thing he said about guys hate coming here and playing in Cleveland on the lake. Like, you're one of them. That's the reason you told him no.
He literally used that as a reason why he would not come to Cleveland. He literally said that.
I know. Because his only time here was the 2020 COVID year, and the weather was horrendous. He played terrible, and that's why there was the first team off the list. That was kind of funny to me.
It's so wild to me when you look historically at teams that have had success and teams that haven't. The Steelers went for Ben Roethlisberger because he grew up in Fostoria, Ohio. He played his college football in Miami of Ohio. Mm-hmm. He looks like a freaking lumberjack.
Yeah.
He belongs in the AFC North. Then there are other players who are born in the South, played their entire careers in the South, are not equipped to deal with these elements because it historically hasn't fit them well. And you've got the Steelers drafting accordingly, and you've got the Browns making the biggest decision in the history of the franchise, pulling a guy here that just doesn't fit. And now the narrative is, well, we can build a dome now. I don't want a dome for Deshaun Watson when he's 34.
Right.
And I like what he said. Like, I'm not beating Deshaun up for his answer because, look, if you ask players, where would you like to play?
I think majority of them will say
Most
no.
people would say, give me the perfect surface.
Yes.
But football is played outdoors. It's played in the elements. That's why I don't love the fact that the Super Bowl is always, with the exception of New York a handful of years ago, played in perfect elements. Football is played in the fall and winter. Go back and look at some of the most memorable games in the sport. Mm-hmm. The Ice Bowl. The Browns famously have played games in frigid temperatures. That's part of it. And to me, it's kind of like building a baseball team. You can build a team to the confines of your park. You know, you can have a left-handed friendly lineup and play at Yankee Stadium with a short porch out there. But the beauty of it is you're going to have to play 81 games somewhere else. So you have to take in everything into account when you're building your team. We've got to build a team that can travel. Mm-hmm. You're not going to play all your playoff games at home. Even in the Super Bowl, you don't.
Right.
So I just think I want 53 guys that say this. I don't care where we play. I'd rather play you in December on our turf with our fans because we're built for that and you're not.
So I made, real quick, because I made this comparison yesterday on the show. And I think this is a perfect panel for it because, Jay, I believe you and my father are around the same age. And if I was having this conversation with my dad, he would say the same things that you just said. Football is traditionally played in the elements. And if you look at some of the most historic games of all time, the Ice Bowl, this, that, and the third. And I would tell my father, yeah, that's cool and all, but we don't live there anymore. And times has changed, right? And when you look at the NFL and how the rules continuously change to be pro offense, and when you look at the fan experience, I just think football and control element environments make more sense. It creates for a better experience from a fan's point of view, and like the product on the field is better if you enjoy offense. And so, like, I get it. You know, I'm born in the 80s. I'd have had season tickets, and because of my dad and my grandfather, who's always built into my head, like, you know, football is played in the elements, or if it's cold, that's okay. You just go down there and you bundle up. Yeah, all that's cool until it's not. You know, and Jim Donovan, I do Cleveland Browns weekend over the weekend at my other job. And Jim Donovan said 2 years ago, because it's funny, you both went to that game too, the Saints game.
He said, I was thinking of as you're talking.
The walk from the parking lot to the stadium
I thought I had
was the most dangerous walk that he can imagine. And then when you're sitting there, you're literally feet away from a Great Lakes. And the point I was making, we can think that's cool to sit there all day long, but we work right here on Lakeside, to where there's people down the street that if they had to sleep in that weather, they probably died. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so, like, I just think that if you're paying disposable income, hard-earned disposable income, then a controlled environment to where you can actually enjoy, because sports is entertainment anyway.
Would you say, though, that you would lose some of your advantage if you didn't?
See, this is my problem, and maybe I'm showing my youth. Y'all can say, like, we could lose our advantage or it's tradition, but traditionally for a long time, outside of the last couple of years, there was a quarterback that had just as many, if not more, wins in that same stadium than the Cleveland Browns did. And so it's like, not all tradition is good tradition, and has it technically really been that much of a home field advantage? Like, since '99?
No.
Like, all jokes aside, without Phil Dawson here, it still hasn't been that much of a home field advantage. So to me, hearing that, it's just like, yeah, I hear you, but I don't.
Browns players are cold too.
No, they are.
They're just
and if you look at the rosters of, it's not like the Browns have more players from the north.
Yeah.
When you're drafting players, now I think
it ain't like they drafted region
You're getting from the
specific.
SEC.
Yeah.
You're drafting from the SEC.
I will say this: when you're drafting a quarterback, because I do think he's the most important position in all of sports.
Yeah.
The Browns had an opportunity when they took Baker Mayfield they also could have taken a quarterback that was from cold weather and played in cold weather and had success in cold weather. And you know what? They didn't, but Buffalo took him.
Yep.
And Josh Allen was built for this.
Yep.
And Baker Mayfield was from the South, played his college career in the South. I mean, for the most part, Oklahoma can get cold in the winter, but for the most part, this was foreign to him. It made more sense for the Browns to take a Josh Allen than it did to take a Baker Mayfield. It made more sense for the Browns to take Ben Roethlisberger than whoever the hell they took before him in that draft.
Oh God.
I don't even remember who I don't want to remember. It was not pretty. Might have been, was it the guy from Penn State?
No.
Courtney.
No. So this was what, the 04 draft?
I was joking, Gerard Warren.
It's funny.
Yeah, it might have been Gerard Warren.
No, that draft, I think we took Kellen Winslow, if this is the same draft.
I can't remember who they took. Whoever it was, didn't work out well for them.
2004?
I think.
Was that when Roethlisberger came in?
Because it was Roethlisberger, Eli, Phillip Rivers.
Yeah,
04. Who did the Browns take in 04?
The Browns in
I think you might
04 took Kellen Winslow.
Okay.
So it was Kellen
But
Winslow.
still, I mean, it was still.
Who's now in prison.
We got taken.
I wanted Sean Taylor.
One's going to the Hall of Fame, the other one's in prison. How'd that work out for us?
You could make the case that also maybe
he
should be
he
next
could
to
have
him.
checked both boxes.
He said, well,
So, but let me think that one
Here's
through
the
before.
thing.
that draft was crazy,
When you
man.
look at teams that are in that Rust Belt like we are, Minnesota hasn't won a Super Bowl. Detroit hasn't won a Super Bowl.
Hasn't been to Super Bowl.
Hasn't been to a Super Bowl. These are teams in the North that could play outdoors. Chicago has won a Super Bowl, though it was 40 years ago.
Green Bay.
Green Bay has won multiple Super Bowls. Pittsburgh. Buffalo has not, but they've been to many, which is interesting because a lot of their path to the Super Bowl went through cold Buffalo. Then they went to warm weather and flamed out. So I don't know that there is or isn't an advantage. All I know is the player that I want to draft, when I ask the question what your preference is, here's his answer. I don't care. I'll play in a parking lot in January. I don't care. I want to play football. And I'll figure out whatever the elements are. If it's Miami in August or if it's Cleveland in January, I'll figure that out. I just want to play football. So I think that's the right answer to that question. I don't blame Deshaun because Deshaun didn't. The question wasn't, are you whispering in Jimmy's ear we need a dome? That's not going on.
They just asked him his opinion.
He answered
Right.
honestly.
And Jimmy already knew his opinion.
Yeah.
Jimmy knew that Deshaun didn't like playing in cold weather and said no because he didn't want to play here in the elements. So, but if you're building a dome, and he's not, but if you're going to build a dome just for Deshaun Watson, that's the biggest mistake you'll ever make, ever.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, I don't think any of us believe Deshaun Watson will be playing for the Cleveland Browns if and when they open a dome
And
in Brook
if
Park.
this was Buffalo and if it was Josh Allen that was asking the same thing, my answer would be the same because, again, the average career, 3.3 years for an NFL player, the same article said for a quarterback, 3.4 years. And so they can have all the opinions in the world that they want. The reality of the matter is most of them won't be around to experience playing in a dome anyway.
they won't.
So
I honestly, truly believe the reason for the dome is far more about the 176 acres or whatever it is on that lot.
I agree.
Than it is any player on this roster.
I
It's
completely
about
agree.
Everything else that the Haslams can do with that land. It's about
They
the
can build
mixed-use-
Browns World.
Oh yeah,
And
it's
that's
about
what they're
the
gonna do.
mixed-use development that they can do out there. They will own it all, and they will just print the money.
If you were at a poker table right now and you had $100 worth of chips, how much are you pushing towards the middle of the table that they do, in fact, end up in Brook Park with the dome?
100.
No, it's not. I don't think it's 100.
No, it can't be 100.
If it's up to them, it's 100.
No, I'm not saying if it's up to who. I'm saying what will. This is not. I think the Haslams are all in.
No, they are.
No question.
They are.
But I think if the city comes at them with concessions, and I think that's about to start at 1 o'clock today.
No, I don't think that's it.
You don't?
No.
If it happens, and it has to happen, they can't just say, we got nothing for you.
The city.
If they come at them with enough concessions, I think Jimmy could say, okay, now you're talking my language. If you can help me build this stadium with that kind of money, and I still can control some things that I currently don't have control over, because it has to be a negotiation.
I disagree.
So you're 100 in.
Well, no, I'm not, because I don't think the city of Cleveland has any say in what's going to happen.
No, I said
really
that on
don't.
Friday.
This is
I said
not
Jimmy's
about-
driving this bus.
This is not about the city of Cleveland.
However, the only way that can change is if they somehow, some way, and it's not going to happen, but if they can miraculously throw a dollar figure at them that makes them eyes wide
see,
open.
they
But I don't
can't.
see how they come up with that money.
They can't because they don't have 176 acres. It's about that. And it's
more than anything else.
No, but they do have some land that they can, in
It's
the
not the
negotiation,
same.
they
But
can
here's the thing.
divvy off some part of it.
Here's what's going to determine it. I tweeted this when they were at the owners' meetings talking about this. If they can get the funding, it comes down to if they can get something on the ballot and they're going to have to get funding. If they can get the funding, it doesn't matter what Cleveland tells you at 1 o'clock today, at 1 o'clock tomorrow, at 1 o'clock. It doesn't matter. They are leaving. If they can get the funding, they are going to Brook Park. But I don't know that they can get something passed on the ballot.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to.
And
it has nothing to do.
But that's a huge ask.
It is a huge ask. And if there's a way that they can do this without getting it on the ballot, it is 1,000,000% happening.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know that they can do that.
Mentioned on Friday that on Thursday for our show upstairs, I had talked to a reporter from Minneapolis that covered the entire deal with the Will family in the city of Minneapolis. And they at one point were in a identical situation. Those that were covering it and those that were following it were convinced it was leaving Minneapolis. It just was going to happen, especially because that's the trend.
Yes.
You know, Jerry built Jerry World. That's not in Dallas. The Rams and Chargers facility, that's not in Los Angeles. The Giants and Jets don't even play in the state of New York. So I think that's the trend. But the reporter told me that there was every indication was this was a done deal. Then they came up with the pull tabs.
Yep.
And that changed everything. Now, all of the gambling that could be done in the state was there. So they had a monopoly on it, and they paid off their stadium in record time and way ahead of schedule.
20 years early.
That can't happen here. Gambling's already available here.
But it can happen.
Something similar could happen, but to think that they're going to pay it off as quickly as Minneapolis did is probably a pipe dream. I think, and I said this Friday, I think it is, I'm leaning way towards them moving. Like, not 100%, because 100% would be, I think, naive. Something could happen.
Sure.
But barring a miracle Hail Mary at the end of the game, this is how confident I am. My team is up 7. The other team has the ball 60 yards away from a touchdown, and they need the Hail Mary. Then they got to get it to overtime, and then even there, they're going to have to pull out the win. That's what I think this is.
Me and you had a conversation. Let me ask you, does it feel like to that point that Mayor Bibb is sitting back in a sense saying, okay, bye? It doesn't feel like Mayor Bibb is too pressed.
He is currently riding in a bus that he doesn't have his hands on the wheel. He, like you said, I don't think they have much to say
They
here.
have no leverage in this.
And I do think that Jimmy is to the point where if this all started as a high-stakes game of political and corporate business, chicken, I think the longer they got down there when they said, oh, now we have the land, we've purchased the land, now I think Jimmy's going, oh my God. Dollar signs are going crazy in his head. I'm going to have hotels. I'm going to have maybe a casino. I'm going to have restaurants, bars, parking, and it's all mine.
Yeah.
I don't have to give any of it to anybody. Bye, Cleveland. And I don't think there's anything Mayor Bibb can do.
I just go back to
keep them.
when I worked for the city of Cleveland. I started working for the city of Cleveland maybe 2010. And at that time, where the hotel sit, it was a Cuyahoga County building. And I remember they tore that building down. There was a parking lot behind it. They tore that down where they got that science research center
Yep.
now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the renovations at that time was geared towards renovating that part of downtown, because if people don't know, you're literally like feet away from the lake, the stadium, the science center, all of that. And then they ran into these issues. Like I work at the Justice Center. And so, like, that's a jail and a courthouse that sits right next to a 5-star hotel, right across the street from a stadium. The issue is you have all these different courthouses that sit right there on Lakeside that you might not just be able to up and move like that.
Right.
You have a Cuyahoga County jail that you just might not be up and move like that. And I'm just looking in totality, and maybe I'm just talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I've heard so much over a long period of time about this lakefront, this entire area, and developing this, that, and the third. And it's just like, it's never gotten past a conversation.
No.
Nobody has
now,
never
Mayor
actually
Bibb is
go.
being a lot more proactive. Like, there's a plan. This is going to be 20 years in the making, though. Like, I don't know how much political cachet he's going to win from passing a plan.
Yeah.
Like, we want tangible. We can go down there in summer evenings and enjoy ourselves on the lakefront and at restaurants with water views and residential and commercial all mixed into one. I will say this. For the city's sake, if they're going to lose them, it's better that they know that right now. Because the stadium is currently the centerpiece of everything they're doing. If the centerpiece is not going to be there, they can pivot before they start dropping concrete.
You know what's the most beautiful thing in Cleveland? And if people in the chat can agree with this or not, downtown Cleveland, 4th of July, watching the fireworks.
It's awesome.
It's absolutely the most beautiful thing in the world.
Go to Chicago.
You see all the boats.
Look at what they've done with Lake
like-
Michigan.
I've said that last
lakefront.
week.
There's so much. I think that, you have a young, innovative mayor that grew up in this city that's probably had ideas running through his head for forever. I don't know the political hurdles that you have to clear in order to get these things done. It's just that I know since I've been paying attention, which is about 14 years now, all it's been is conversations. And maybe we need this generation now that's currently making moves now. Maybe these are the people that you do need in place to actually get something done.
I agree with that.
Like I think people envision change, but when it's time to hit go, they so afraid of something different.
Jason, do we have a dollar number on what the Browns playing in Cleveland means to the Cleveland budget annually?
No, I don't know what that is. I'm sure that someone could come, and who knows how accurate it is. I'm sure that number exists or someone could get it, but I don't know what that number is.
What do they get financially from the Browns?
What does the city get?
Yeah.
Or is it just small business owners? That
I think
benefit?
it's, there's taxes that you get from the team being in the city.
Sure.
There's financial advantages. I don't think it's as much as we make it to be at times, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't think with football it's as much
Well,
as we
the
make
parking
it to be.
part of it is massive.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Massive. And the residual restaurants, hotels,
Yeah.
bars, 10 days a year.
Yeah. But to your point about all it is conversations, it's because there's no money here. Like the teams in town will tell you Cleveland's poverty rates and how hard it is to get with ticket sales and anything like that because there's just no money here. So where's this money going to come from? And that's one of the questions I have. If the Browns leave and go to Brook Park, is the state still going to invest the money for the footbridge connecting
Great
downtown
question.
to the lakefront?
That's a great question.
And I don't know that we have the answer to that because I do think I've said it. I'm on record. I've said it multiple times on this show. Go to Brook Park. Do more with the lakefront than put a friggin' football stadium there.
Right.
There's so many more opportunities for that. And I do think I don't know where all the money's going to come from because there's not a lot of money here. But I think that Cleveland is on the verge, I absolutely believe, of some sort of renaissance.
Wow.
When you talk about what Dan Gilbert and the clinic is doing with the river, with the Cuyahoga River, and that land down there that is just, it's blight right now. There's nothing there. And they're going to put this hundreds of millions of dollars practice facility on the water down there. And
Which will have public use.
And if they can do if the Browns go to Brook Park and fix that area, if you can redo the waterfront into something more than just a stupid stadium that's only used 10 times a year. And then there's this other component, and the Cavs, in this, not the Cavs, but the practice facility is also connected to this push to bring this women's soccer stadium here. And I don't know where they're going to get the funding for that, but that is a real push right now. Yeah, there's a real push right now, and it's not just for women's soccer. It's more about the use of a 10,000-seat outdoor venue and what David Gilbert and his team can do with a venue like that in terms of concerts, state football playoffs. They could fill that thing up. I've heard from so many people they could really fill it up. The soccer team would be the anchor, but there's other things you can do with that. I don't know where they're going to put that. That's a long ways from happening. But you see,
Maybe in the footprint of the current stadium.
maybe, but again, I don't know that you want to use up the lakefront, although this would be smaller, but it's, I don't know. But when you talk about these different projects going on, I do think that there's an opportunity. And the Haslams are committed to Cleveland. Dan Gilbert is committed to Cleveland. There's a lot of billions of dollars between those two families that are committed to revitalizing this thing. And the only other point, and I mentioned this last week, but I think it's worth repeating, when you talk about funding, when you talk about the stadium, when you talk about electronic poll tabs, I 1,000% think electronic poll tabs is the way to get this thing done. Marijuana and gambling. And everyone cracks up and says, how much weed do I have to smoke and how much do I have to gamble to get the Browns a dome? But I do think that the electronic poll tabs is the way to go. And Dave Yost, the Attorney General of Ohio, is in charge of charitable gambling. That falls under his department. He is running for governor in 2 years, and he is behind in the polls. What better way to make a name for yourself and to drive a campaign for yourself than to get something done for all of the sports, not just Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Toledo, Cleveland, all these facilities, these sports facilities. What better way than to say, I got all of this money for these facilities without touching general fund dollars.
Do you think, though, in Minnesota, the pull tabs were so popular because that was the only avenue
Yes.
anybody in the
Yes.
state had to scratch their gambling
Yes.
itch. Here, gambling is legal. You can do it on your phone. I don't know that it would have the same rate of success here.
But here's the thing: how often do you go to the Jack Casino?
Well, that's the thing. Their foot traffic is negligible.
I never go.
Well, their foot, look where
I
it
never
is
go.
and the area, but their foot traffic is negligible. And
But-
when you look
but-
at the percentage of dollars wagered last year, very small of it is from the physical plants of the casino.
But here's the-
we're doing it on our phones.
But here's the thing: if you go to dinner with another couple and you guys are sitting there at dinner, or if you go out with buddies to get beers and there's a game there, would you grab the game and play it? I would. I know I would. And that's what they're targeting. They're not targeting. They're not
the
necessarily,
bars is where they do the business.
Yes,
because
and
the more you drink, the looser you get with your funds.
and it's not necessarily they're not necessarily targeting the clientele of the Jack Casino, and they're not necessarily targeting the people that are taking the over in the Cavs.
Isn't
in
it the
Utah.
blue collar worker who goes for a couple of beers after a
Yes.
long day at the shift?
Yes.
But he does have other options to gamble.
He does, but if you're sitting there in the bar,
It's idle
and
time.
it's right there.
Okay.
You
Look,
can
I could
grab
be
it.
wrong,
Now,
yeah.
here's the thing: you got to have a backup plan. Just because it worked in Minnesota doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work here. I
Right.
agree with that. So then, what do you do if there's a shortfall? Like Minnesota, it was so overwhelmingly popular, and by the way, it wasn't at first. It was a disaster at first, and then they tweaked some of the things, and then it took off. But if it doesn't work here, then what?
Yeah.
And that's the question that they have to answer: is the then what?
I mean, Jason said there's no money here, and it sounds like what you're saying is just find other creative ways to generate the money.
Yeah.
And if they do that, that shows a lot of creativity on their front. But I'm sorry, if my opinion is emotional based, but it's really how I feel because I'm from the inner city. If you can be that creative and generate those type of funds to build a damn stadium or help contribute to a stadium,
Socially, why can't you fix other
why can't you
problems?
fix other things?
I
Because
agree.
I know teachers and cops that both work part-time jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
So what they're doing would enhance a lot of people's
on the
lives for 10
entertainment
days a
side,
year.
but it's like
But what about all of the other social issues that we have? And we keep talking about sin taxes and using money from cigarette sales and alcohol sales and gambling sales and weed sales. And what's next? Prostitution sales. And it's like, who knows where it ends, but are we making society better?
and that's all I'm saying. That like, if you could get this damn creative to come up with different ways to generate funds to help for a stadium,
Fix some
let's
other
keep it
issues.
real, man. If the Browns was a consistent winner and always a team contender for the Super Bowl, nobody would give a damn about the current
I
stadium.
agree with that. And here's what, okay, owner, you've got billions. So much so you just invested in one of our other team's rivals. You write your check so you can
I don't
reap
disagree.
the rewards.
Yeah.
I think these stadiums should be built with private funds from the owners of the team, and then they own all the revenue and everything around it, and that's fine. It's a capitalist society, go nuts. But the role of the government should be, if you're raising billions of dollars, shouldn't be to enhance one billionaire's lifestyle.
No.
It should be to enhance all of the residents of the population they serve. And we've got a myriad of problems in Cleveland that need to be
Man,
addressed.
we talk all the
Let the owner pay
We
for
talk
the
all the
stadium.
time about the median income, right? The Cleveland being the top 3 poverty city in the United States. What about the murder rate that's high here? What about in the city of Cleveland, how often people don't graduate from high school?
Well, the murder
Like,
rates and the crime rates are typically mirrored by the poverty rates.
Yes.
So it's
there you
not
go.
like a chicken. It's not a chicken or the egg. Poverty precludes crime. You have a population base that is desperate. They're destitute. They don't have the jobs they want. They don't have the disposable income they want. So they go take it. So poverty precedes crime. You tackle the poverty rates, and your crime rates are going to adjust themselves accordingly. So
it's a pipe dream. When I be hearing these discussions, all this stuff is well and cool, and it shows that you can be creative.
if he goes to Brook Park, what public funds does he get?
Well, that's what they have to figure out. That's the part they have to figure out is how much and from where. Whether it's marijuana,
The LA thing was built with private money.
the whole thing.
So
And that's
why can't that be? That
And
should be the model.
And I have asked that multiple times, and that's the way that he did it. I forgot his name now. Is it Spanos?
Stan Kroenke.
Cranky. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there are some guys, and actually I think prior to his stroke, Dan Gilbert was one of these guys, does not want any sort of government interference, does not want anyone telling him what he can and can't do. So I'm going to do this myself. screw you. You have no say in what I can do.
That's the way it should be done.
And I agree with that. And when you take public money, now the public has a say in how you do it. And also, Cranky has a little bit more of a real estate type background, I guess. But I tend to agree. But it's not so much in the trend has become if you want it, pay for yourself. But a lot of them do still have public influence. Atlanta, help me. Arthur Blank. I can't think of names today. Blank paid for a lot of it himself, but not all of it. But he got all of the overruns. And I think you have to do a similar deal here. Where it's like, okay, you're going to get this, and that's it. And any sort of overruns is on you. And Jimmy's going to have to agree to that.
And that's fair. I just think the amount of money that's put in from public funds should be minimal. And then there should be some gain to the city, to the area, that you reap the rewards of all the profits too.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if you're part owner. And I just, you look at the way things are done in Green Bay. They haven't asked for a new stadium. They've renovated their stadium, but that team is owned by the citizens. And not only do they operate fiscally responsible and turn a profit for its shareholders, they win.
They won't ever talk about it, but the Guardians have wanted a dome for years.
Have they really?
Oh, yeah. The Guardians have wanted a dome for a long, long time.
Wow.
But that was a non-starter. Like, you never heard, when they just went through this renovations, you never heard from them about a new stadium because they knew that was a non-starter.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, ownership doesn't have the funds to put up half of what it would cost. So it was...
They can't afford Adam Duvall, rather less a new stadium.
Man, I'm sitting up here.
And you're going to use our funds to continue to run a profit-making machine for the owner while putting a subpar product on the field, or at least from a dollars and cents standpoint. That would never fly.
You want to know how crazy Cleveland fans is? Let the Dolans come ask for a new stadium and money to help build it. Oh my goodness. Everybody in Cleveland going to have something to say.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody.
So that was a non-starter.
All right, well, this is going to be a fascinating cover. It's probably going to take potentially a year or longer.
You got to go now. They have to have a plan now.
When do you think is a deadline that we'll know? This year?
There's a presidential election in the fall. I think you have to have something on the fall ballot. If you want to
optimize voter turnout.
If that's what you want, and I guess it depends on which way you think this is going to go. If you want to optimize voter turnout or not.
Right. School levies try to sneak under the radar and they go odd years.
Yes. And
hoping that they can get it through.
But you need 4 years probably from passage to funding to construction. You need a good 4 years.
Yeah.
So I think personally, and I'm not an expert in this, but from enough people that I've talked to on this, because I'm invested in this now, like I'm fascinated by how this is going to go. I think they need to have something on the fall ballot if you want a new stadium in Brook Park.
Real quick, before we move on, because I just opened up my phone, first article I see, I follow this page on I'm From Cleveland. 2024 NCAA Women's Final Four in Cleveland estimated to generate $25 million this upcoming weekend.
That's a number that I've heard. I've heard a number bigger than that. Yeah. But, look, they're striking when the iron's hot. They got the Final Four. Now Caitlin better win tonight.